Hello everyone, Psycho Dude Horror here, and today we are doing a new story. It is called My Tiny Town Just Got Put on Lockdown. It is made by a Redditor that goes by the name of Cryptic Nightmares. So if you guys would kindly support him, in the description I have the link to the book, which is on Amazon. There's 2 of them, and we're going to be doing the 2 of them. I got permission from him, and so we are going to be doing the 2 books, except we're going to do part by part like we usually do. So yeah, again, go and support him on Reddit. Link will be in the description, and go check out the 2 books by him on Amazon. Link will be in the description. And I hope you guys enjoy this story. Stay scary. My tiny town just got put on lockdown. My name is Traven, and a few days ago, the government put our little town on quarantine and locked out anyone from coming in or going out. No, I don't really like people anyway, so at first the idea of being told to stay at home seemed like a very welcome option to me. They said it was like some new strain of the flu or something, or other worse version of a common disease. I'm not really sure about all that because, to be honest, I really wasn't paying attention to the news when they told us, and I don't really watch the news anyway. I did, however, realize that I hadn't heard any rumors or anything involving the discovery of a potential threat of some new disease. This makes this quarantine feel very odd and very sudden. Now that I truly think about how this all came about, what further increases how odd this seems is the fact that today I decided that I wanted to go grab some, an energy drink or 2 from the gas station at the edge of town. As I got in my truck and drove the 4 blocks to the gas station, I noticed that I was literally the only car on the road in the whole town. Once I got to the gas station, I saw military vehicles blocking off the roads in town. Let me be a little more specific. There were 2 Humvees with roof-mounted 50 cal machine guns, but no troops, just the vehicles. I park in a spot as close to the gas station door as I can. This was easy in a complete vacant parking lot. I get out and try to go inside. Maybe I can ask the cashier if they know what's going on. This thought suddenly faded as I walked inside the building to complete silence and emptiness. Now, I don't mean it was some strange void when I walked into as I opened the main door. What I meant is there was no music, no chattering, and absolutely no people anywhere. Not really sure what to do. I finally decided to grab the drinks I came here for, let the $5 bill on the counter loudly announce to apparently nobody what I was doing, and then left back out to my truck. Once I got back in my trunk, I set my drinks in the passenger seat, turned the engine on. I glanced back over to the military vehicle sitting there in an attempt at the roadblock, and that's when I first noticed that just beyond the Humvees was a curious dense fog blocking out my view of anything past maybe 10 feet from the vehicles. So from where I was in the parking lot, I guess there was maybe an 1/8 of a mile worth of visibility. I decided to drive over to the roadblock. Maybe I could see the soldiers sitting in the vehicles and ask them if they were able to give me any information about what's going on, or maybe the severity of whatever disease they told us was going on. I backed out of my spot, turned towards the roadblock. As I got closer, I noticed that the fog was not moving back the closer I got to it. it remained in place, almost like a wall. I pulled up, stopped, and put my truck in park. Sitting only a few feet from the Humvees, I hesitated before getting out to go take a closer inspection on the situation. I didn't notice any soldiers asleep in reclined seats like I had expected to see as I got closer. Slowly, I exited my truck and walked between the two military trucks towards the fog that oddly remained in place, like some sort of swirling cloud wall. As I got within about arm's reach of the fog, a little static or a low sizzle. Another note was that it looked like it had some strange sort of purple tint. Not really a tint, but more of a glow. Just a faint sort of bioluminescence. Lastly, I decided to reach out and place my left hand in the fog. As I expected, it felt no different than a cool mist enveloping my hand as it moved past the edge and into the fog. What I didn't expect was that it also had a strange sort of weight to it, almost like the mist felt heavy. One of the purple bioluminescence swirled and floated across my hand. Not feeling any different than the rest of the fog, but visually I watched it happen, and it caused me to quickly recoil my hand, thinking, okay, now I have a crazy story to tell my wife when I get back to the house. I guess that now is as good as the time to explain a little more about me and my situation as this event started. I live in a small, and I mean small, town. The total population of our town is maybe 800 people. To be honest, I feel like they include pets in that count to make it just sound bigger. The size is maybe 10 blocks by 12 blocks. It's one of those towns you can hold your breath and make it all the way through town as you drive through. We have two gas stations next to each other on the edge of town. A video game arcade, a hardware store you can't walk into because its owner is an old hoarder. So if you need anything, you have to tell him what you need and let him search the building to find it and bring it back out to you, and you to pay for it. Cash only, as you could expect. No grocery store or any other types of stores, yet we did manage to end up with a McDonald's in town near the gas stations. I live about a block away from our town circle in a 2-story house with my wife Grace, 2 dogs, and 2 young daughters, an infant we named Izzy, and a 2-year-old named Addie. Don't worry about us with this quarantine business, we should be good to go. We got a freezer full of meat, lots of water and non-perishable food stocks in the house, and now that you have an idea of how we are entering this whole ordeal, I'll get back to my story. Still standing there a mere few feet away from the fog, I looked back into our small little town and noticed that there was no fog at all any closer to the center of town than this. I jogged back to my truck and got in, backed away from the roadblock, and decided to drive the 10-ish blocks to the other side of town. As I drove through town slowly, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a shadow flash past as I drove past an alley. I stopped my truck and suddenly rolled the window down to peer down the alley, trying to see what it may have been. After about a minute and seeing no further movement, I rolled my window back up and continued toward the other side of town. Still moving through town, looking both ways down each intersecting street, I remained the only vehicle in the whole town. Once I got to the far side of town, I came to the same scene as I had before on the other side of the road, in and out of town. 2 Humvees sideways in the form of a roadblock. No soldiers in sight. The purplish gray fog just past the roadblock. It was then that I noticed there was still no sound, complete silence, save the sound from my truck, my breathing, and the sound of my own heart beating nervously in my ears. The lack of background noise was strange enough in the gas station earlier, but as I got out of my truck at the second roadblock, I noticed there were no sounds of trucks or cars traveling on the nearby interstate. No birds, dogs, lawnmowers, crickets, nothing. The lack of ambient noise anywhere in town unsettled me enough to make the decision to remain in my vehicle for the remainder of my expedition around town in search of answers. I decided to drive to the edge of town curiously about the fog. As I drove my truck full circle around the town, I confirmed my fear. The wall of strange fog that surrounded our town is in the same military roadblock at every road out of town. I drove back home, grabbed the drinks out of the passenger seat, and went inside. As I walked in the house, my wife, who was currently playing Barbies with our toddler and our infant, crawled around the room exploring different toys lying about, said, "What took you so long?" Just then realizing that all my exploring of the situation in the town had caused my short trip to the gas station for drinks had taken nearly an hour. "It's weird out there," I replied. "Something is very much not normal in town." I continued, adding a look on my face to tell my wife that I had a story to tell her once we didn't have little ears listening in. Catching my hint, she assured our toddlers that she would be back to play Barbies in a few minutes, and followed me into the kitchen where I was able to tell her everything I saw and what was going on while I had been out. She then tried to pull out her phone and make calls to her family. This act taught us a very interesting fact about our current situation. Oddly enough, we had internet, but somehow limited, as if there was some sort of strict parental control over our entire network. YouTube, Plex, Spotify, and Google seemed to work just fine, but the phone, Facebook, text, Kik, any other communication type of act did nothing more than endlessly load or wouldn't even open at all. No form of news seemed to be able to load either, so phones, tablets, and computers had been reduced to devices solely for entertainment. Together we decided to do our best to stay in the house as much as we could until we understood more about what was happening. The decision was made that she went back to play with the children, and the dogs began to trail me around the kitchen as I began to prepare us something for dinner. That night, after eating and the girls got in bed, my wife and I sat on the couch with some movie playing on the TV that neither of us were really paying attention to. While we talked about some things we had noticed while glancing out the window during the day, and wildly speculated as to what we thought was really going on. After a while, and once the movie that we weren't even paying attention to finally ended, we decided to go to bed. Day 4. I awoke to my 2-year-old running in my bedroom screaming at 6:30 in the morning, Daddy, I want Cinnamon Crunch!" Who needs an alarm clock when you have little kids? I thought to myself as I sat up. Apparently it's time to get up, huh? Okay, let's go get you some cereal, I said to her as I got out of bed and began to follow my daughter downstairs as she rambles about what she wanted to do today. "I want to watch a movie. I want my tablet. Come sit with me on the couch." As we got to the top of the steps, on our way down to the kitchen, our littlest lets out a cry announcing that she was awake now too. I told my 2-year-old that we would do one thing at a time and that I'd meet her downstairs after I brought her little sister to my wife so she could nurse her. As I dropped off the youngest to my wife and head back out of my room to get breakfast ready for our other daughter, I hear her yell to me at the top of the steps again, "Please make coffee, and strong." "I'm on it," I replied as I walked down the steps. As I reached the bottom of the steps, my jaw dropped as I felt fear rise in the back of my throat. I yelled to my wife to get downstairs and see this. Soon I hear her moving upstairs, making her way with our daughter to the top of the steps and making her way down them. By the time she got to the bottom of the steps, I had moved over to the window on the far side of the room. "What the fuck?" she exclaims as she hits the bottom of the steps. Looking out the window, that fog that I saw yesterday had crept into the town. It swirled outside like the panes of glass. The violet hints of color had become more like a pearlescence, like looking into a puddle in the summer that has had bits of oil or chemical spilled into it, shimmering rainbows of color as the light reflects off of it. My visibility out the window had been reduced to a few yards past the road. I could just make out the front door of the house across the street. "I told you something weird was going on," I said to my wife. "I told you, it feels a little weird, kinda heavy, but I don't think it's dangerous." Beyond the swirls of the odd fog outside, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. Again, today, however, I still didn't see any cars driving down the road and no movement at all, really. So I walked into the kitchen and got breakfast ready and coffee started as my wife remained looking out the window, searching desperately to find any form of normalcy in the purple rainbow haze our house had been engulfed in as we slept last night. As I gathered the various parts and pieces needed to prepare cereal for my daughter, both dogs wandered in the kitchen sleepily and sat staring at me next to the door, clearly asking to be let outside to do their morning business. Cautiously, I hesitated to look out the window in the door, unsure if the dogs would be okay out in the backyard in the fog. Okay, make it quick. Shit's getting crazy outside. I said to Buddy as I pulled the door open and let them both run out to the backyard to relieve themselves. Our two dogs are both 70 pounds, one boy, Bodie, a pit bull French Mastiff mix, and one girl, May, whom is some sort of black-mouthed cur mix. As the dogs run out the door, Bodie stops at the top of the porch, steps cautiously to go into the fog, but relents and quickly does his business and runs back to the door to let me back in. May, on the other hand, has no hesitation as usual and sprints out to the backyard and takes her time, then finally returns. I hate to admit to using the dogs as guinea pigs to see if the fog was dangerous, but letting them outside was truly just that. A test to see if it was harmful? Thankfully it was not, and our dogs are fine. When I opened the door, I once again noticed that there were still no ambient sounds outside. No birds chirping, no bugs. I decided that even though the fog seemed to be harmless, there was something very eerie going on. Something that made all the birds leave and everything remain quiet. Trevin, come here quick! I rushed into the room where my wife was standing still looking through the window. Look! She says as she points across the street. I look just in time to see a small orange glow fade off the fog. What was that? I say as I step closer to the window next to her, trying to peer deeper into the fog to no avail. I don't know, it looked like some small animal, a raccoon or something maybe? But it was on fire, just running down the street, she answered. We both stood in awe, trying to look further into the fog to see it again, or possibly catch a better glimpse of what it was. As we stood there peering into the purple mist, our 2-year-old happily ate his cereal, humming along to what sounded like a Moana song playing in her head. Then we heard it. The first sound I had heard coming from outside since yesterday. It was quiet at first, coming from further away and heading toward our direction and getting louder. Do you hear that? What was that? My wife whispers to me as we both lean towards the glass to hopefully hear better. As the sound grew closer, it became more apparent that there was some excruciating animalistic screaming, like the sound of a rabbit in pain mixed with the terrified screams of pain from a young girl. As the sound got louder and closer, it was enough to make your skin crawl. I noticed it was consistent, like it was being made with one long breath from something with infinite lung capacity. As I was vocalizing my observation of the sound, my wife exclaims, "Holy shit, look! How do you get it?" I hear Addie repeat from behind us as my eyes focus on what my wife is talking about. Just coming into view as it ran down the street, we saw a small raccoon-sized animal still on fire. The animal was clearly not a raccoon, but about that size. It had 6 legs and was moving in an almost elegance that head was somewhat larger for its body and shaped like an upside-down triangle. Protruding from its face were fanged mandibles that looked like the mouth from a creature in those Predator movies. It had a tail that almost looked lizard-like, scaly and thick. It had no fur, but it had tight, dark, almost black skin and completely engulfed in what looked like a fireball. The thing ran up into our yard towards the house, got halfway to the house, and changed directions, the fire following the entire time. yet the animal didn't even seem to notice it. As it changed direction, it stopped for a split second and looked up toward our window. Our eyes met in that split second. We stopped for a split second and looked up towards the window. Our eyes met, and in that split second that our eyes were locked, my brain exploded with the visions, and my chest felt weighed down as if I had been kicked in the chest by an MMA fighter. Horrific visions of blood and viscera, torture, and mutilations. Terrible pictures flashed in my mind. So many and so quickly I could never describe each one, instantly causing my head to ache and nearly caused me to collapse to the ground. As quickly as it happened, it broke eye contact and skittered off down the street. "What happened?" Grace said as she saw my stance shudder with the sudden psychological assault I had just endured. "That wasn't making noise," I said, ignoring my wife. I said, ignoring the question my wife had just asked and not knowing how to even explain what I had just experienced. To this, she realized I was right and turned back to the window, just as another orange glow began to appear from the fog. This time, it was making the guttural screams that pierced our ears and almost hurt my heart to listen to. As it came into focus, it was a man, tall and extremely thin, no hair, very unusual facial features, and it looked like the skin was melting off his body. Which in a way made a little sense because he too was naked and completely engulfed in flames. As he ran past our house, Grace and I stood silently watching. The man, unlike the spider raccoon, definitely seemed to notice the fire while he was surrounded by, and the scream-like sound never stopped as he ran past our house. It didn't stop for him to take a breath or didn't change pitch, but it was definitely coming from this man. As we watched, it became clear that he was either chasing or hunting the other spider creature that had just ran past. He, however, didn't run into our yard but continued straight down the street in the direction of the other animal. As he began to get far enough to fade from view into the fog, Grace broke our stunned stance. How about we close the blinds for now?" "Yup, good idea," I agreed as we both began to run around the house closing all the blinds. We spent most of that day leaving the blinds closed or pretending nothing was wrong, trying to keep the girls entertained. Only a few more times through the day did we hear screams and other unnatural noises coming from outside, and a couple times Addie questioned it, but we were able to keep her distracted by playing Barbies with her or having dance parties in the living room. After the girls went to bed, we sat quietly by the window, blinds open, both staring out into the darkness of the night. Watching, waiting, listening. After about an hour with nearly nothing said between us, I broke the silence. "I'm almost afraid to go to bed about how much changed since the last time we slept last night. I'm not sure I want to know what will be different when we wake up tomorrow," I admitted as I stared into the night, the purple haze just swirling just on the other side of the glass. "Well, we can make sure all the doors are locked and stay up all night looking out the window, but I'm not sure that's going to change whether or not things will change overnight," Grace replied, taking her turn to be the voice of reason. "Yeah, you're right. Let's go to bed," I said, getting up to check the doors. As I approached the front door to check the lock, I heard another distant animalistic scream emerge from the fog, almost as if it had to remind me that this was far from over. We moved from my main floor to the upstairs, checked on the girls, and lied down, still both awake for the better part of another hour, lying in silence, just listening to anything coming from outside. So yeah, guys, that was chapter 1 of my tiny town just got put out of lockdown. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to leave a like and subscribe. And remember to support the creator. The creator's name is Cryptic Nightmares. And he is the writer of the story. The 2 books that he has is on Amazon. The link will be in the description. Go support him there. And if you can't support him there, then go follow him on Reddit. I'll leave his Reddit profile in the description. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe. And I shall see you guys in the next story. Stay scary.